key Red Sea port. What happens next? A swift victory? A brutal war? Global backlash? Or an unstoppable domino effect that reshapes the region? Today, we're breaking down this explosive scenario, its history, military reality, and the global response. Buckle up. This is not just a theory. This is a geopolitical firestorm in the making. To understand Ethiopia's Red Sea ambitions, we need to rewind. Eritrea was colonized by Italy in 1890, becoming a hub for Italian ambitions in East Africa. But after Italy's defeat in World War II, the British took over Eritrea in 1941, administering it until the early 1950s. During this time, the question of Eritrea's future became a hot topic. Based on colonial boundaries, Eritrea deserved independence. But the UN, mainly influenced by the US and Britain, decided to federate Eritrea with Ethiopia under Emperor Haile Selassie in 1952. Eritrea was granted autonomy within the federation, but this arrangement didn't last long. In 1962, Ethiopia unilaterally annexed Eritrea, declaring it a province of Ethiopia. This move sparked outrage among Eritreans, who saw it as a betrayal of their right to self-determination. What followed was a brutal 30-year war for independence, one of the longest and bloodiest conflicts in Africa's history. By 1991, Eritrean fighters had completely routed Ethiopian forces and liberated their country. In 1993, a UN-supervised referendum sealed Eritrea's independence with an overwhelming 99.8% vote. Ethiopia, which had controlled Eritrea for less than 40 years, suddenly found itself landlocked again. Since then, Ethiopia has been dependent on Djibouti for 95% of its trade. And with a population growing at breakneck speed, Ethiopia needs more trade routes. Ethiopia's recent interest in Red Sea access isn't just about economic growth. It's also about overall geopolitical influence, and partly driven by Saudi-UAE rivalry. But there's another factor at play: domestic politics. Abiy Ahmed's government, struggling with ethnic conflicts and economic challenges, sees the Red Sea debate as a way to rally nationalist sentiment. By pushing the idea of reclaiming sea access, Abiy is attempting to unify Ethiopians under a common cause, shifting attention away from domestic crises. There is also an election coming in a year. You get the point. That's why Assab, a port once under Ethiopian control, has become the theme of Abiy's propaganda. Could Ethiopia take it back? And more importantly, could it hold on to it? Let's say Ethiopia makes its move, a surprise attack. Eritrea's defenses are overwhelmed. Within days, Ethiopian forces occupy Assab. But here's the problem. Seizing territory is easy. Holding it? That's a different war. Eritrea, despite its small size, has one of the most battle-hardened militaries in Africa. And its strategy? Bleed Ethiopia dry. Eritrea's President Isaias Afwerki isn't known for backing down. Instead of a direct counterattack, Eritrean forces could shift to guerrilla tactics, disrupting Ethiopian supply lines, targeting key infrastructure, and turning Assab into a war zone. For Ethiopia, every day of occupation becomes more costly. And let's not forget, Eritrea has a history of outlasting its enemies. If it could endure 30 years against Ethiopia's former military regime, it won't fold easily now. But here's where things get even more dangerous. Ethiopia's move wouldn't just provoke Eritrea, it would bring in Egypt. Cairo and Addis Ababa are already locked in a bitter feud over the Nile. If Ethiopia takes Assab, Egypt has every reason to intervene, arming Eritrea, launching naval blockades, or even conducting airstrikes. Suddenly, Ethiopia isn't just facing Eritrea, it's facing a regional superpower. And it doesn't stop there. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are major players in the Red Sea, a region critical to global trade and security. Saudi Arabia leads the Red Sea Council, a bloc specifically designed to prevent instability and conflict in the area. Eritrea is a member of this council, but Ethiopia is notably absent. This exclusion could spell trouble for Ethiopia if tensions escalate. Saudi Arabia is unlikely to tolerate instability near its shores, and Ethiopia could face severe consequences: sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and even economic strangulation. Here's the twist. While the UAE appreciates Ethiopia's role as a spoiler against Saudi Arabia's Red Sea Council, it wouldn't welcome a full-blown conflict that disrupts its lucrative trade routes. For the UAE, stability is key to protecting its investments and ensuring the smooth flow of goods through the Red Sea. Back home, things could get even worse. Ethiopia is already dealing with internal instability, from the Tigray conflict to rising tensions in Oromia and Amhara regions. A costly war over Assab could be the tipping point, weakening the central government and helping the TPLF and other anti-government forces to overthrow Abiy's government. What starts as a military gamble could end in a domestic disaster. And let's not forget the global superpowers. China, with its Belt and Road investments, might pressure Ethiopia to back down. Russia, always looking to expand its influence and is a close ally of Eritrea, might back Eritrea. The Horn of Africa, which is already a proxy war zone for the Gulf states, could become the next battleground in a global superpower. Some might argue that Russia's annexation of Crimea proves powerful states can defy international norms. But Ethiopia isn't Russia. Russia shielded itself with China's support in the UN Security Council. Ethiopia has no such protection. Russia absorbed sanctions because of its massive energy exports. Ethiopia, on the other hand, depends on foreign aid and the US dollar. Sanctions would cripple it. The Crimea playbook doesn't apply here. But here's the alternative. Ethiopia recently reached a memorandum of understanding with Somaliland for access to port in exchange for recognition of Somaliland. Yes, it didn't materialize, but it proves that diplomacy has greater potential for success than conflict. Seizing Assab would cost Ethiopia everything. Negotiating for access, that could secure its future without war. So could Ethiopia seize Assab? Maybe. But could it hold on to it? Almost certainly not. The military, economic, and geopolitical costs would be catastrophic.
Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Mubarak.